Hey everybody, my name is Anjeli Santillan. I'm the president of the Food Science Club, and thank you all for watching this video today. So I'll be presenting information on the Maillard reaction and caramelization process. I actually just got back from the camping trip at which I presented this presentation, and I presented it to some of my members from the Food Science Club that could make it to the camping trip, but I mostly presented to the Adventure Bound Club, who I want to thank a lot and give a big shout out to because they were such a cool and welcoming group of people. And they asked awesome questions and were very engaged, and they made great comments about the Maillard reaction and caramelization. And I will address those comments and those questions in this presentation because they were so great. So big thank you to those guys again. They're awesome. Alright, so with that being said, let's get started and let's first talk about the Maillard reaction. So it's the reason why our burgers are so tasty. The Maillard reaction is a type of non-enzymatic browning process that produces those delicious flavors and aromas and is responsible for that signature brown color. It was discovered by the French chemist Louis Camille Maillard. There are two distinct types of non-enzymatic browning, which we will cover in today's presentation: the Maillard reaction and caramelization process. And by the way, non-enzymatic just means that it doesn't need a biological catalyst to stimulate the reaction. And it's actually why smash burgers are so tasty as well. The burger is flattened, and that maximizes the surface area on which the reaction can occur, and this also maximizes the surface area on which the heat can react with the patty. So this maximizes the Maillard reaction as well, and that allows it for it allows it to taste a lot more meatier and produce a lot more of those delicious aromas. So the ingredients to the Maillard reaction include sugars, proteins, and high amounts of heat. So you need a high temperature, 140 degrees Celsius is optimal. That all contributes to your browning. So why is that? So sugars are carbohydrates, and carbohydrates often contain hydrogens, but most importantly, they contain your carbons. And carbons are very important in organic chemistry, but they're very important in life. They are very versatile atoms because they want for bonds, and they are often the site on which other atoms can bond to and react with. And you also want your proteins because they supply the amino group, and amino groups are groups that contain nitrogen, and often they also contain hydrogen. And here are a list of examples where you can witness the Maillard reaction. So you have your steak, and you all know that steak is rich with proteins, in particular in the muscle region. So the muscle region is a wealthy bank of proteins and therefore a wealthy bank of amino acids, because amino acids are the building blocks of proteins. So when you subject the steak meat into in high amounts of heat, you allow for the amino acids to react with the surrounding carbohydrates. Also with onions, so you guys have heard of caramelizing onions, but you can also make it undergo the Maillard reaction. So in onions, the carbohydrates break apart under high amounts of heat, and this allows for the amino acids in the proteins to bond to the carbonyl groups in those carbohydrates. Also with milk, so milk has a lot of amino acids, specifically lysines, and you can tell that lysine is an amino acid because of that INE ending here in lysines. So because it has a lot of amino acids and therefore amino groups, it undergoes the Maillard reaction very quickly, and the least reactive amino acid is cysteine. So the Maillard reaction produces your melanoidins, which are large polymeric molecules that are responsible for the resulting brown color. And it also produces antioxidants. So you hear this word being thrown around a lot in the food industry when they're trying to appeal to customers, but it's for a good reason. So what happens is your body produces these things called free radicals, and these are bad. They're very reactive and they can destroy DNA. What antioxidants do is they break down these free radicals. So they have a very important role in our health. And the Maillard reaction also reduces the nutritional value of the food because it's breaking down those amino acids. There is also a possible carcinogen that can be produced from the Maillard reaction, and specifically acrylamide, very carcinogenic, and this usually happens under extreme conditions like extremely high amounts of heat or extremely long cooking times. So there are a number of ways that you can promote the reaction. One way is by increasing the concentration of substrates, those are your proteins, and reducing sugar. You can also create a more basic environment. So one way people often do this is by adding baking soda to the food, which alkalizes the food. Alkalizes is just a fancy word for making basic or raising the pH of. So this illustration over here shows why this occurs. So under acidic conditions, or when the pH is very low, there is a high concentration of protons. Protons, by the way, are your hydrogen atoms. They are positively charged and attracted to these valence electrons on the nitrogen atom, and this inhibits the valence electron's ability to bond and attach to the carbon in the carbonyl group. It disallows the nitrogen from bonding to the carbonyl group at all. And so under basic conditions, those protons are very less in concentration. The valence electrons from the nitrogen of the protein have less hydrogen atoms or protons to be attracted to, and so nitrogen is free to bond with the carbonyl group from the sugar. And the Maillard reaction occurs optimally at least 140 degrees Celsius. Another important thing about the reaction is that if you want to speed it up, you don't want any water present. So boiling water has a maximum temperature of 100 degrees Celsius, and this is not hot enough. As we've established, we want at least 140 degrees Celsius. Also, the Maillard reaction involves the loss of water. And these reasons are why boiled food tastes nasty, especially if you don't do anything with them afterwards. So one question that one of the people from the Adventure Bound Club asked was, does the reaction rate depend on the type of proteins that are present? And I would say yes. So we talked about this in a previous slide. Cysteine is an amino acid that is the least reactive. So a food with a high concentration of cysteines would cook a lot slower than a food that is rich with a more reactive amino acids. So protein content does matter. This diagram over here basically summarizes what I just said. So you need your sugar, in this case they use glucose, and your amino group coming from your protein. And this produces a lot of intermediate products, which can then react with other intermediate products to form new products. And it goes so on and so forth, kind of like a chain. And there is a large range of these products that are being produced. And on this side of the diagram, you can see that some of these aromatic compounds have contribute to different aromas and flavors. So, for example, pheromones over here, they contribute to that sweet caramel and burnt sort of flavor and aroma, while your furans, they add to the meaty and burnt and caramel-like flavor. So this shows part of the mechanism. This reaction is actually pretty obscure, and the mechanism isn't extremely well known, but mechanisms, by the way, are illustrations that show the movement of electrons, because chemical reactions basically are the movement of electrons. So that's why mechanisms are so important. And you can see that you start with your amine, and you also start with your reducing sugar over here, and you see that the nitrogen bonds to the carbon from the carbonyl group. So yeah, at some point there's Amadori arrangement, and like I said, many products are produced that can react with each other. And like I said before, the Maillard reaction can produce carcinogenic products, and this is usually under extreme conditions like extreme temperatures and cooking times. So for example, acrylamide can be formed by reacting asparagine with dicarbonyl. Alright, so now we get into caramelization. So what's different about caramelization is that you only need to you only need sugar. So you don't need protein, unlike in the Maillard reaction. Sugar, as we've established, is a carbohydrate, so that's one of the 4 macromolecules of life. And carbohydrates have building blocks called monosaccharides. Smaller carbohydrates, and those are made of monosaccharides or disaccharides, they are sugars. And common monosaccharides include fructose and glucose, and the most common disaccharide is sucrose, which is made of a glucose and fructose molecule each. And the caramelization process requires high amounts of heat, so at least 110 degrees Celsius, but often 150 degrees Celsius or higher. And interestingly enough, the caramelization process and Maillard reaction can occur simultaneously. So you guys have heard of caramelizing onions, but you can also make it subject to the Maillard reaction. You can also, as you guys probably know, you can caramelize your your marshmallows, but the marshmallows, when placed in fire, they also undergo the Maillard reaction. And one of the professors at the camping trip, they asked a very good question, and they didn't understand how marshmallows could also undergo the Maillard reaction, and that's because marshmallows, they have sugars, but they also have protein, so that protein comes from the gelatin in them. Alright, so in the caramelization reaction, this is a step-by-step process that kind of walks you through basically what happens. So first, you have enolization occur. So this is shown in the diagram over here, what enolization is. This is the sugar reordering itself. And so you see that this carbonyl group, which is a carbon that's double bonded to an oxygen, it turns into an enol, which is a carbon double bonded to another carbon, but also attached to this hydroxyl group, so this OH group. And second, dehydration occurs, so that's when the sugar molecule loses a water molecule, and this enables a lot of different chemical reactions and produces different molecules. And lastly, you have your products being formed. So small molecules have reacted with each other to produce larger molecules. So this could be caramelin, and caramelen. Those are responsible for the brown caramel color. And this process of large macromolecule complexes being formed from smaller units is called oligomerization. And my face cam is kind of blocking the way here, but the aromatic compounds that are produced are much smaller, so this grants them the ability to evaporate. And if you think about it, aromatic compounds need to be small because they need to be able to travel through the air and quickly reach our noses so that we can absorb that aroma. So this includes diacetyl, which contributes to your buttery smell. Alright, so several ways you can promote the caramelization process is by controlling the pH and the temperature and the sugar type. All of that affects the reaction rate. So you want to place the sugar in intensely acidic or intensely basic conditions to increase the reaction rate. And you can see that in this diagram. So here we have the sugar and water mix, but if you add lime juice, you subject that to acidic conditions, and as you can see here, this produces a nice dark brown color. And if you add baking soda instead to the sugar and water mix, you alkalize it and you can see there's actually a darker brown color here. So both of these examples indicate that the caramelization occurred, and if compared with this, they seem to have occurred a lot more quickly. So caramelization can then occur at lower temperatures with this extreme pH. Alright, so this is my works cited. I hope this interested you guys as much as it interested me and interested the Adventure Bound Club. So thank you all for joining me today. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.